This is one I highly suggest picking up. This is a very, very fun, solid list for under $100. It's definitely strong enough to hold its own at a table.
Oh, howdy. Hey, hi. How you doing? It's Wheezy F Baby. Come and take a piss and urine on the toilet bowl, bitches. Sorry. I have taken into consideration your comments about upping the budget on some of the decks. Not getting rid of the $50 joints, just adding in some $100 joints, maybe some $200 joints. Well, I've heard you. I went to the higher-ups, and I pleaded with them, and I pleaded with them, and I pleaded with them. Days turned to weeks of me pleading. So much so that they could only make one decision at the end of the day. They hit me over the head with a rock. And the second I woke up, I said, dang nabbit, I own my own camera, I'll do it myself. This might be one of the strongest decks I've ever made, not even just in like the Lotus Precon series, like in general on the channel, this might be one of the strongest decks. So for under $100, if you're looking for a powerhouse, let's start things off talking about the commander, who is Kellan the Kid. For 1 green, 1 white, and 1 blue, you get a 3/3 with flying and lifelink. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. They're trying to trick me. I'm a rat in the maze and they're trying to trick me. I can't be tricked that easy. Obviously, his ability reads, cheat big stuff into play. Play a big thing from exile, get a big thing from your hand. Just play a big thing by plotting it, play a big thing from your hand. And then the little last bit of text that it throws on the card, the little, if you don't, you may put a land card from your hand into play. Yeah, they're trying to play that off like that's the, if you can't do any of the other good stuff, you can still get a land. No, I think that is the good thing. Every single time I play anything from anywhere other than my hand, I get a land cheated into play for free. Disgusting. And you will find out by the end of this video how disgusting this deck is. If that's enough of a little carrot on the end of the stick for you, let's get into it. Where I've seen a lot of people go with this deck is the Foretell route with cards like Sage of the Beyond and Battle Mammoth, or the Chaos route with stuff like Apex Devastator, which is cute. But our way of making sure we get Kellan the Kid's trigger is playing off the top of our deck, along with a few other pieces of tech. And with this slight increase in budget, we got some real spicy stuff in here. 𝗨𝗡𝗪𝗘𝗥 is 1 and 2 green for a 3/3 that lets us look at and play creatures off the top of our library. We can pay 1 green and tap him, and tap 2 untapped creatures we control to reveal a creature card from our hand or the top of our library. If we reveal a creature card this way, put it into the battlefield, activate during your turn. This dude's great. He's super low CMC, so we can come out fairly early, start cheating out some of our awesome landfall creatures, which you'll see here in a minute, while also getting tons of Kel triggers. 𝗨𝗪𝗪𝗘𝗥 Lost on the Range is 1 and 2 blue for a 1/1 with Ward 2. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. The top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to its mana cost. You may plot non-land cards from the top of your library. This is another great low CMC way to start casting spells from the top. I mean, technically not casting from the top, plotting from the top. Either way, triggers Kellan, pretty good. The reality chip is 1 and a blue for a 0/4. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. As long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library, and has reconfigure for 2 and a blue. This is the best card in the deck, no question. An early body that turns something into a playoff top card, and if that creature that it's attached to dies, this just falls off and becomes a creature again. It's a 0/4, so it's great at stopping early game aggro. This is the definite first pickup for the deck. Magus of the Future is 2 and 3 blue for a 2/3. You can play with the top card revealed and cast spells from the top of your deck and play lands from the top of your deck. One with the Multiverse is 6 and 2 blue for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library and cast spells and play lands from the top of it. Once during your turn, you may do that for free from the top or from your hand as well. This one's kind of just a game ender. You should be winning by this point. Elven Chorus is 3 and a green for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. This is one that I did not know existed, if I'm being honest. I had to go to Google and just type in play creatures from the top of your library. Went to like page 2 halfway down and I was like, is that a real card? Look it up on Scryfall. It just like didn't get shown to me. So Elven Chorus, also a good pickup. Vizier of the Menagerie is a Foundations reprint that has definitely dropped the price down, which makes it a really easy pickup for this deck. For 3 and a green, we get a 3/4. You may look at the top card and cast creature cards from the top of your library, and you can spend mana of any color to cast creatures. This is really going to help with that Magus of the Future with the 3 blue pip.
So that's nice. Outside of just playing off top, there are a few more just cards that were way too good to not run in this deck. The first being Emoti's Celebrant of Bounty. For 3, a green and a blue, we get a 3/1 with Cascade. Spells you cast with converted mana cost 6 or greater have Cascade. This is a great way to trigger Kellan when you cast it, as well as giving the other 4 spells that we have in the deck with 6 or higher CMC Cascade, which is definitely relevant late game. Ellie and Alan, Paleontologist, are nuts. For 2, a green, a white, and a blue, we get a 2/5 that can tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, discover X, where X is the mana value of the card exiled, activate as a sorcery. Being able to turn some of these late game landfall threats we're going to talk about soon that have died into discover triggers to trigger our commander even more is just such a good cycle to have on board. Shardless Agent is actually one that is surprisingly good in here. For 1, a green and a blue, we get a 2/2 with Cascade. Doesn't seem great, but when you think about it, most of the stuff she's going to hit, being a 3 CMC Cascade, is just going to be mana ramp. So a lot of the time, she's 3 mana for a 2/2 and 2 lands hitting play, which in this deck is really good. As is 6. For 2 and a green, we get a 2/4 with Reach. Whenever 6 attacks, mill 3 cards. You may put a land from among them into your hand. As long as it's your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have Retrace. Not only is it a great way to fill your hand with some more lands that you can play for all of our landfall triggers, but it's also a great way to cast stuff from the graveyard to trigger our Kellan. Speaking of landfall triggers, we'll move into those now. Architect of the Untamed and Royal Cartographer are friggin' sweet, especially when out together, both providing an energy on landfall. The green one turning 8 energy into a 6/6 beast, and the blue one turning 6 energy into draw 3 cards. With the amount of mana we have entering the battlefield with Kellan the Kid and all the ramp in the deck, these fire off pretty frequently and provide a ton of value early on. While Emiria Angel, Felidar Retreat, Springheart Nantuko, and Rampaging Baloths all provide token creation on landfall, meaning we can swarm the board extremely fast for the win, Springheart Nantuko has the added benefit of being able to enchant something and make copies, which will win the game. And Felidar Retreat can give a board-wide 1/1 token in Vigilance, which again, with all the tokens, ends games. We've also got Seer's Sundial, Tireless Tracker, and Tatiova Benthic Druid. She didn't have to work for that at all. She's Benthic, okay, ladies? Sometimes you don't gotta work for it. Which all turn our landfall into card draw, which as you can imagine is a super efficient form of card draw. This deck will keep a full hand for sure if one of these are in play. Avenger of Zendikar is the poster boy for game enders with landfall creatures, being a 5 and 2 green 5/5 that makes a 0/1 for each land we control and gives each of those 0/1s a 1/1 counter whenever we play a land. I don't really need to say a lot more about that guy. Courser of Krufix is 1 and 2 green for a 2/4. You can look at and play lands from the top of your library. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. This is a fantastic early game aggro hoser, as its big defense will make it a very good blocker, along with the life gain on landfall, which is just a nice quality of life ability to have on board. On top of that, lets you take lands off top, which can get you through some of those land pockets. Land pockets! Undergrowth Champion, again, is a really good aggro hoser, being 1 and 2 green for a 2/2. Gets a 1/1 counter every time you play a land. Whenever it takes damage, prevent that damage, and remove a 1/1 counter. The ultimate blocker. Zamone All Questioning is a weird one, but I like her. 1, a green and a blue for a 1/1. At the beginning of your end step, if a land entered under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, create Primo the Invincible. A legendary 0/0 green, blue fractal creature token, then put that many 1/1 counters on it. The prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, and 31. And no, I didn't know that. It's on the card. I would have had no idea. Zamone actually comes in for a second time with Mystery Unraveler for 2, a green and a blue, at a 3/3. Whenever a land you control enters, manifest Dread, which means you look at the top 2, pick 1 to enter face down as a 2/2, put the other one in your graveyard. You can flip the 2/2 over if it's a creature for its mana cost, but that's if this is the first time that ability is resolved. If it's the second, third, fourth time, you can start flipping over manifested stuff for free. So, I don't know, like a Rampaging Baloth into play with this doesn't seem bad. An Avenger of Zendikar? Sure. I really just like it. Now, of course, like, playing lands from grave is gonna be good in a landfall deck. Crucible of Worlds is outside the budget, though. We would have had to have cut a ton of awesome stuff if we wanted to run that. But there's Perennial Behemoth and Runanap Excavator, which both do the same thing. Let us play lands from our graveyard, but they're both creatures, so it's almost better in this deck because a lot of our win cons care about creatures. And speaking of which, let's move into the win cons. Now, honestly, we've already talked about most of these, but let's get into like the specifics of why they win in the deck. Avenger Zendikar is pretty self-explanatory, creating a ton of tokens that get massive throughout the game and scale into the late game. Endray's Forerunner is a great way to end the game in this deck, being an 8-drop, 7/7 Vigilance, Trample, Haste that gives your whole board +2/+2 Vigilance and Trample with all the tokens. Easy way to end the game. Springheart Nantuko not only makes 1/1 tokens if you just play it for a 2-drop, it can also be enchanted to stuff to make copies of that thing when lands enter. So imagine enchanting like a Rampaging Baloth, an Eternal Witness, a Rex Sage, not to mention just an actual Endrace Forerunner or like Avengers Zendikar. That's game. And finally, Scute Swarm. It's the classic win con for this type of deck, being a 2 and a green 1/1. Whenever a land enters, you get a 1/1, but if you control 6 lands, you get a copy of Scute Swarm. So this thing will flood the board very quickly, especially with Kellan triggers going off. It's great. Like I said in my Run Hosers video, and if you haven't checked that out, there's a link to it right there. You need to run tools in your deck that prevent whatever stops your deck from working from stopping your deck from working. This deck loses the board wipes. So to prevent that, we run Dauntless Escort and Selfless Spirit to give our board a momentary board protection in the form of Indestructible. This deck also has a problem with counter spells because we don't want them to be countering our huge token producers or our big board buff. So we run Destiny Spinner and Prowling Serpapard to stop that from happening. Past that, we'll just talk about the basics, kind of sum up the deck, and I'll get out of here. Being a landfall deck, you need to make sure you hit the land drops. So to guarantee that, we are on the higher end of lands with 38 lands. On top of that, the list runs 13 ramp cards, 9 of which put lands into play. The deck being so proficient at digging with all the playoff top cards, we only run 5 card draw cards, those being Biden of Thassa to turn damage into draws, Mentor of the Meek to turn tokens into draw, Selvala Explorer Return to give ramp, draw, as well as the option to get political at the table, Sharp-Eyed Rookie giving us clues for playing anything bigger than him, and Vega the Watcher turning all of our spells we cast off the top of our deck into more card draw. We also run 7 pieces of removal, those being Cankerbloom, Kusali Pridemage, 𝗣𝗪𝗪 Commando, and Reclamation Sage to deal with artifacts and enchantments. Frogify and Unable to Scream are both cheap removal in the form of enchantment auras that we can cheat out with Kellan the Kid's ability if need be, and Scavenging Ooze is a graveyard removal on a creature, which is great, along with 1 board wipe in the form of Austere Command. This deck comes in at $98.96, and like I said, it's an absolute powerhouse. Here's 3 starter hands. Boom. Bop. Bam. You know what? I'll give you 3 more. Type of shit I'm on you wouldn't understand. It's not a bad deck. Here's what the mana curve is looking like, along with the mana color divvy up in the deck. This is one I highly suggest picking up. This is a very, very fun, solid list for under $100. It's definitely strong enough to hold its own at a table. If you do end up picking it up, please let me know how it played. Let me know any additions you would make to this deck, anything you think I missed out on, any cuts you would make that you don't like, anything like that. Make sure to like the video, and if you want to show a little bit of additional support, the Patreon link is in the description and the comments as always. Thank you to everybody that is currently on screen, my awesome, amazing, beautiful, strong, cute, quick, talented, funny, gracious, empathetic, really rugged, strong, I feel like I'm explaining a Ford truck at this point. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.